Hello friends, happy Friday. You've now made it to the end of the week, which is great. That means there's only 9 more school days left until holiday break. But we are now in the thick of A Christmas Carol, and I wanted to draw an idea to your attention. It's a concept called parallelism. And if you think into math, what parallel lines look like, even into geography when you're talking about lines of latitude and longitude and all that. When you're talking about parallelism, you're talking about 2 lines that will continue on forever and ever and ever, exactly mirroring each other to the point where they will never, ever, 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 ever touch, but they are almost exactly alike in that sense. It's just that one is here and one is here. It's almost like a mirror effect. And so I put art imitating life, because that's really what's at work here. As we were exploring Charles Dickens and who he is and what he strove to do in his writing, we also talked about the fact that although all of his published works are fiction, they are all very much tied to his life and his own personal experiences. Now we're getting a very, very clear glimpse of this happening in this end of the first stave and beginning of the second stave as we explore some themes of Jacob Marley and the other spirits who are doomed to wander the earth, and a glimpse of Scrooge as a young boy, and situationally some of the same stuff that Scrooge was experiencing, Dickens experienced in his own life. This is what good writers tend to do. Writers who tend to write crime dramas have some sort of background in law or police work or this and that, and so on and so forth, or that's where they draw their most interest. Well, any writer can do that and use it and put it into a fictionalized place and have it seem very, very real because it is for them. When we're talking about Jacob Marley and talking to Scrooge, he says, "Mankind was my business." When Scrooge says, "Wait, this chain you wear, that you're dragged down by, that you're tortured by, doesn't the fact that you were so good at business count for anything?" Because he's trying to save his own butt, right? We're so good at business, that has to count for something. He says, "No. Your business is not the work you do, it's who you are as a human being to other people, and how you interact with them, and how you show them charity and goodness and love." And this notion that the fact that Scrooge and Marley have ignored this, their humanity in other people, and they are now bound by the chains that their business, their actual life business, their jobs, put them into these shackles. Their jobs put them into these shackles, their business, that they're going to have to carry with them always. They become prisoners, just like all these other mournful spirits that can no longer help anybody. They're doomed to have to watch all the suffering and not be able to interact with goodness in their heart. They've become prisoners to their life's work, to the debts of their life, the stuff that they didn't do and pay back to humanity while they were alive. Does that sound familiar? Charles Dickens' dad was a prisoner to the debts of his life, very literally in a prison. And the sorrow and the mournful wailing of these spirits does sort of channel, in a parallel way, Dickens' pain from his own life. But it goes further. When the Ghost of Christmas Past comes, we see glimpses of Scrooge as a young boy that really resemble the life that Dickens led. When we come upon him, all of his friends are going home for the holidays, for the Christmas holiday. They're spending time with their family. And yet, we come upon this boarding school. Remember, Charles Dickens was boarded out when his father and his family went to prison for the debt, right? And the sister was sent away. Sounds pretty familiar. Okay, so he's in this boarding school. On Christmas, away from his family. Everybody else went home to their families. All of his friends disappeared. Sound familiar? We get a glimpse of him alone, lonely, and immersing himself in a world that he created through his reading of books. Sounds an awful lot like Charles Dickens' childhood. Fast forward a bit, a few years. It's another Christmas. He's alone again. His friends have left. He has no family to go off to. And yet, his sister runs through the door. His little sister runs to the door and says, Ebenezer! Ebenezer! It's a miracle! We're going to reunite and be a family again. When you can come home. He's reunited with his sister, and he's able to come home. Sound familiar? When that inheritance came through, wasn't Dickens reunited with his sister and allowed to go back home because his dad was freed from jail? Parallelism. All of these emotions that are coming up, that are making Scrooge, the adult Scrooge, weep as he remembers them. I wonder if Charles Dickens, as he was penning these words, as he was writing these words, was weeping himself, remembering the pain and the hardship that it was to be in that situation as a young boy in the real world, not in the fictional world. And there's one other thing. We find out that Dickens' sister, this beloved woman, this perfect little fan, okay, or Scrooge's sister, this perfect little fan, has died. And she had only one child, Scrooge's nephew. The nephew that he treats so horribly later on, or earlier on in the book. Later on in his life, earlier on in the book. Is it possible, and I'm not defending his actions because no one should ever treat anybody the way Scrooge treats people, but is it possible that this ideal woman who passed away, very much like an ideal woman in Charles's life, who he viewed as a family, Charles Dickens' life, who he viewed as family, when she passed, his world crumbled and collapsed? Parallelism. That same emotion is being felt by Scrooge as he remembers his sister. Guys, chances are good that you look an awful lot like your parents. Well, that means that chances are good that Scrooge's nephew looks an awful lot like Scrooge's sister, his dearly departed sister. Not defending the way he's treating his family, but can we walk in his moccasins for a hot second? Walk 2 moons, right? Might it be very difficult for you to spend time with someone who has with someone who looks almost exactly like someone who was taken away from you far too soon, who conjures up all of these horrible emotions inside of you? We kind of start to understand a little bit more about why Scrooge ended up the way he ended up. Parallelism. The sorrows of Dickens' life are brought into his characters, and his characters are full and rich and developed because they seem real. How? The realism of Dickens' own life is being brought into these characters and breathed into these characters so that you, the reader, me, the reader, we get to read the words, fully understand and connect with the situation. Guys, this is what reading is all about. Author's purpose, main idea, analyzing characters, analyzing themes, and trying to learn lessons that will ultimately change us without having to experience situations ourselves. Great stuff for a Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a safe weekend. I'll see you on Monday.